Night settles over the Luwi River with a heaviness that feels almost deliberate, like the darkness itself is choosing to come early. The last hues of dusk bleed into the water, swallowed by a surface so still it resembles polished obsidian. Even the wind hesitates here. The tall reeds lining the riverbank stand motionless, their reflections sharp and unmoving, as if carved into the water by a silent hand. On most nights, the Luwi has a pulse. Frogs calling from the shallows, insects buzzing in frantic arcs, distant hippos grumbling in the deeper bends. But tonight, that rhythm falters. A strange quiet seeps through the valley, settling into the trees and spreading across the water in slow, electric waves. Animals sense what humans struggle to describe: an atmospheric tension, subtle but undeniable, that always arrives moments before a storm or something else. Far upstream, thunder rolls like a creature waking from sleep. A faint tremor ripples across the water, not from the wind, not from rain, but from something shifting beneath the surface. The river carries the vibration forward, a low, dull hum that vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving behind a silence that feels somehow expectant. Lightning flashes in the distance. For a fraction of a second, the river glows white. And in that brief, unnatural light, something long and dark glides just beneath the surface, a silhouette nearly the width of a canoe, its back forming a faint, shadowy ridge. Then, darkness crashes back down, erasing the shape completely. Local fishermen know this moment well. They speak of it quietly, in careful tones, always after dark. The instant when the river seems to reveal something it spends all daylight hiding. They call it Shadowback, a crocodile so old its skin has darkened into a near-black sheen, with a deep stripe running the length of its spine like the shadow of an ancient scar. A creature that surfaces only when storms gather and the river becomes the color of ink. Some dismiss it as myth. Others insist they've seen it just once, just barely, in the strobing light of distant lightning. But all agree on one thing: if Shadowback truly exists, it does not belong to the world we see. It belongs to the moments between light and darkness, where the river keeps its oldest secrets hidden. Part 2. The river. Old-timer. They call Shadowback. To understand Shadowback, you must first understand the kind of river that could create a creature like him. The Luwi is not a wide or dramatic river, no sweeping channels or thunderous floods. It is narrow, intimate, and deceptively quiet. A place where crocodiles do not simply survive. They refine themselves over decades into masters of invisibility, slipping between grass and current like ghosts. Among these masters, the legend of one stands apart. Fishermen describe him not in full sentences but in fragments, half-whispered details delivered with the tone of someone recalling a nightmare they're not entirely sure was real. A long, dark ridge rising above the water, a body broader than any canoe, skin darker than the river mud itself, and that unmistakable feature, a deep, dense stripe running along his back, as if the river's own shadow had fused to his spine. Crocodile experts are careful with words. They avoid myths, they prefer measurements, and they rarely indulge rumors. But even they agree on one thing: if Shadowback exists, he would have to be incredibly old. Nile crocodiles can live 70 years, some reaching 100. Over that time, their scales thicken, their colors darken, and their bodies accumulate the scars and distortions of survival. A crocodile that has weathered half a century of storms could easily become unrecognizable next to the younger males patrolling the river. But age alone doesn't explain the accounts. Fishers say Shadowback moves differently, too smoothly, too quietly. Large crocodiles make waves, churn mud, announce their presence through sheer mass. Shadowback doesn't. He slides beneath the surface with the silence of something that learned long ago how to hide even from its own kind. Some believe he is a territorial giant forced out of the main Luwi River years ago, retreating into these quieter bends where no young males challenge him. Others propose a rare genetic deviation, melanism or pigment clustering, that created the dark stripe along his spine. None of these theories feel entirely complete, but each contains a sliver of truth. Then there's the unsettling consistency in the stories. Shadowback is almost always seen during storms. Not before, not after during. As thunder rolls and lightning fractures the sky, Fishers claim the river stirs in ways it does not at any other time. Broken reflections, sudden swells, a dark back rising just long enough to be noticed, never long enough to confirm. It's as if this creature responds to the storm itself, as if the river chooses those moments to reveal its oldest hunter. And until someone captures him on film, Shadowback remains suspended between two worlds, a biological possibility and a silhouette carved from fear and river light. Part 3: The first signs that something is wrong. Trouble on the Luwi River never announces itself with drama. It begins quietly, so quietly that most people would overlook the signs entirely. The first indication often appears at dawn, when the river should be alive with movement. The splash of tilapia near the reeds, the quick dart of frogs, herons stepping with delicate precision along the shallows. But on certain mornings, everything is missing. The water sits untouched. No splashes, no ripples, no birdsong. Local fishers call these mornings the hollow hours, the rare moments when the river feels emptied out, as if something moved through in the night and pushed every living creature aside. One morning, a conservation patrol found what would become the first major clue: a set of drag marks running across a sandbank so clean and deep that they looked like they'd been carved by machinery. The marks stretched nearly 9 meters, plunging directly into the river with no return trail. No footprints, no tail sweeps, not even the messy churn that a large crocodile usually leaves behind. Just a perfect, heavy groove, like a colossal body, had been pulled silently from land into the water. Crocodile specialists examined the marks. They were too large for any known adult in the valley. The width matched something far beyond the typical 5-meter giants that dominate the Luangwa ecosystem. But the oddest detail wasn't the size, it was the precision. Crocodiles thrash. They slide, twist, leave erratic patterns. Whatever made this mark moved with an eerie straightness, as if it glided rather than crawled. A few days later, another strange sign appeared downstream. Fish floating belly, up near the bend, but not torn apart, not eaten, simply dead. Rangers speculated about sudden temperature changes or low oxygen pockets, both plausible explanations. But the timing unnerved them. These fish kills happened only after nights of storms, the same nights when fishers claimed Shadowback surfaced. Then came the incident that no one could explain away. During a routine check at dusk, 2 rangers in a canoe noticed the river turning unnaturally still. Not calm still, with a kind of suspended tension, like a held breath. A faint bulge rose several meters away, too wide to be a hippo, too smooth to be floating debris. Before either of them could react, the bulge sank straight down, leaving behind a single expanding ripple that faded faster than it should have. One of the rangers later said, with a seriousness that silenced the room, it felt like the river folded around something huge. He refused to describe it further. From that evening on, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Storms, silence, drag marks, dead fish, soon stillness. The river was signaling that its balance had shifted, perhaps not suddenly, but undeniably. And at the center of every account, every disturbance, every whisper of fear, was the same name: Shadowback. Part 4. The hunt that no one was meant to see. The Luwi River at night is a world built from silhouettes and suggestion. Shapes blur into one another, and even seasoned rangers trust their ears more than their eyes. But on one unforgettable evening, a rare convergence of moonlight, low water, and silence revealed a glimpse of the river's most elusive predator. A moment so quick and so improbable that the 3 men who witnessed it still disagree on whether they truly saw what they think they saw. The incident began near a shallow inlet where antelope often drink after dark. Puku tracks dotted the mud, fresh and crisp, telling a quiet story of a small herd that had approached the water just minutes earlier. The air was cool, still, and unnervingly quiet. Even the insects had fallen silent. The ranger's infrared camera captured nothing at first, just the monotone glow of reeds swaying gently in the faint breeze. Then, without warning, the herd bolted. No sound, no splash, no obvious threat, just pure, explosive, panic puku sprinting in every direction, hooves slicing through the darkness, as if fleeing from a danger none of them could see. One ranger swung the infrared camera toward the water, expecting to find the usual culprit, a large Nile crocodile lurking near the edge. But what appeared on the screen was different, larger, smoother, and unmistakably silent. A massive shape glided beneath the surface, its outline too long and too clean to be an ordinary crocodile. The back ridge was visible for a second, a dark, uninterrupted line cutting through the faint moonlit reflection like a scar. And then the water erupted, not upwards, as crocodiles typically ambush, downwards. The surface caved in, folding around the prey with a precision that made the rangers freeze. There was no thrashing, no struggle, no churning of mud, just a sudden absence, as if something incredibly strong had pulled its target straight into the river's depths before gravity could respond. One ranger later said the moment felt surgical. By the time the water stilled, the night had returned to its unnatural quiet. The puku herd had vanished into the trees. The infrared camera, shaken and glitching, managed to capture only a distorted blur, an elongated shadow in motion, framed by streaks of digital interference. What haunted the rangers wasn't the kill itself. It was the method. Crocodile ambushes are violent, messy, explosive. This was controlled. A single motion executed with the confidence of something that had done it countless times, across countless storms, for countless years. When the team reviewed the footage later, one detail stood out. During the split second when the back ridge broke the surface, the water around it did not ripple. It simply parted. Some claim it was a trick of light. Others suggest a creature of extreme age, moving with refined efficiency. But among those who know the Luwi best, the conclusion spread quickly. No ordinary crocodile hunts like that. Only Shadowback does. Part 5. The life cycle of a river ghost. To understand a predator like Shadowback, you must go back to the beginning, to the quiet, unremarkable life cycle of the Nile crocodile. A life that seems almost too ordinary to create something so feared. Yet, it is precisely this contrast that explains how a creature can grow from a trembling hatchling into a legend that bends an entire ecosystem around its presence. A crocodile story begins on land, in the heat-soaked sandbanks above the river. A mother buries her eggs in a mound of dry earth, guarding them with a vigilance that surprises many who see crocodiles only as cold, indifferent hunters. For weeks she waits, defending the fragile clutch from monitor lizards, hyenas, and even the elements. When the hatchlings finally emerge, their calls, thin, high-pitched chirps, summon her instantly. She carries them gently in her jaws, one by one, down to the water. If Shadowback truly exists, he began life this way too, no larger than a human hand, a vulnerable slip of muscle and instinct trying to survive in a river filled with giants. Most hatchlings do not survive the first year. Birds, fish, even other crocodiles thin their numbers quickly. Only a few grow beyond this stage. The ones that do carry scars of near misses, close calls, narrow escapes. To reach adulthood in a river like the Luwi requires a kind of relentless adaptation, patience, stealth, and an almost mathematical understanding of when to move and when to disappear. By the time a crocodile reaches adolescence, it has learned the rules of its world. The males fight, forcing the weaker ones into quieter corners of the river. These exiled crocodiles become reclusive, slipping into side channels, hunting at odd hours, avoiding conflict. Many researchers believe this isolation is what allows exceptional individuals to reach extreme ages. A crocodile that avoids fights avoids injury. A crocodile that avoids humans avoids bullets. And a crocodile that avoids other males avoids the constant stress of territorial life. Perhaps this is where Shadowback's story diverged, somewhere between exile and longevity. A large male pushed into the still waters of the Luwi. A survivor who learned not just how to hunt, but how to remain unseen. With age, crocodile skin darkens, scales thicken, patterns shift, genetic quirks, sun exposure, old wounds, all can create unusual markings. A stripe formed along the spine is not impossible. Rare, yes, but nature specializes in the improbable. And a crocodile that lives 50, 60, or even 70 years becomes something more than a hunter. It becomes a memory shaped into bone and muscle. a creature that has watched generations of animals rise and vanish, a survivor that understands the river's rhythms more intimately than any human could. If Shadowback is real, he is not just an apex predator. He is the product of decades, maybe a lifetime of quiet survival, molded by the slow, relentless patience of the Luwi River itself. A creature that has lived long enough to become a myth. Part 6. The Last Test of an Old Hunter. The Luwi River remembers every creature that has lived long enough to leave a mark. And for all of Shadowback's years of silent rule, his greatest challenge, his defining test, arrived not from the shadows, but from the changing river itself. It began during an unusually harsh dry season. The water levels dropped faster than they had in decades, shrinking deep pools into isolated pockets. Hippos migrated early, fish schools thinned out. The current slowed to a sluggish crawl, exposing sandbanks and mudflats that hadn't been seen in years. Rangers whispered that the river was shrinking into a shape it hadn't held since the 1,970 seconds, a shape that favored younger, faster predators. Large male crocodiles from the main Luangwa Channel, pushed by hunger and competition, began drifting into the Luwi in search of new territory. These newcomers were powerful, ambitious, and unscarred. Their presence cracked the fragile quiet that Shadowback had dominated for years. Confrontations became inevitable. One evening, as the sun bled red into the horizon, a young dominant male, broad-shouldered, armored, bursting with strength, slid into the long pool that locals quietly referred to as Shadowback's Bend. The young male's movements were loud, confident, disruptive. He thrashed along the bank, snapping at fish, asserting himself with the arrogance of a rising monarch claiming a throne. What happened next was not witnessed directly, but the river left enough traces for rangers to reconstruct the moment. Along the mudbank, deep gouges marked the site of a violent struggle. The width of the drag lines showed two large bodies locking in a twisting, spiraling combat, their tails carving arcs into the silt. But the most telling sign was the water itself. The entire bend was clouded, stirred up from the bottom, as if something enormous had rolled repeatedly in a life or death contest. Young crocodiles fight with noise, splashes, cracks, violent lunges. Old crocodiles fight differently. They conserve energy. They choose precision over force. They turn the river itself into a weapon. It appears Shadowback pulled the younger male into deeper water, away from the shallows where youthful strength mattered. In the depth, age and experience meant more. The patterns in the river mud tell a chilling story. One set of tracks circling tightly, the other set weakening with each turn. By dawn, only one drag mark returned to the bank. The younger male was never seen again. Rangers speculated he fled downstream, defeated and starving. Some believed he drowned during the struggle. Others insisted Shadowback spared no challengers. But the victory came at a cost. For the first time, a new set of signs emerged. Slower movements, longer intervals before resurfacing, and sections of sandbank with marks that suggested fatigue rather than stealth. Shadowback had survived, but the fight had taken something from him, something age could not give back. And yet, he remained, silent, watching, holding to the last curve of the river he had ruled for decades. A fading king, perhaps, but still a king. Part 7. The River That Remembers. As seasons change, the Luwi River shifts back into its fuller shape. Rains return. The banks swell. Frogs sing again. Fish flicker beneath the reeds. Life begins moving with its familiar, ancient rhythm. An orchestra that has played the same patient song for thousands of years. But within that returning pulse, there is a quiet absence, a subtle void that only those who know the river well can sense. Shadowback is seen less now. Not gone, just deeper, slower, more selective in the moments he reveals himself. The storm-lit glimpses grow rarer. The night silences less frequent. On some evenings, rangers drift along the reeds and wonder if the river has finally reclaimed him, folding his story back into its dark, unbroken current. On other nights, they swear they feel a vibration beneath their canoe, a faint, rolling tremor like the heartbeat of something immense. And perhaps that is the true nature of ancient predators. They don't simply live and die. They dissolve into the landscapes that shape them. For every crocodile that survives long enough, its life becomes part of the memory of the river itself, woven into the stories whispered by fishermen, traced in the scars on the mudbanks, echoed in the fear that makes animals pause before stepping into the shallows. Shadowback is one of these memories, maybe the oldest one. Whether he still moves through the Luwi's deepest pockets or rests beneath a fallen tree, hidden forever from human eyes, his presence lingers. Not in photographs, not in field data, but in something more elusive. The sense that the river is older, wilder, and more mysterious than any observer can fully comprehend. And maybe that is the point. Some creatures are never meant to be captured on film. Some stories are not meant to be pinned down with evidence. They survive because they remain just out of reach, half seen, half believed, entirely alive in the thin space between knowledge and myth. So the next time thunder rolls over the Luwi River and the water darkens into a mirror of storm clouds, a question rises with the wind. If a predator becomes so old, so perfect, and so indistinguishable from the river that made him, does he ever truly disappear? Or does he simply return to the silence that created him?